Chen Yonggui, the poor among the high officials. In his later years, Chairman Mao intentionally promoted and trained many cadres who came from workers, peasants, and soldiers, allowing them to enter the ranks of important leaders. Among them, Chen Yonggui, who came from a peasant background, is the most well-known. Chairman Mao once said forever is good, and these three words spread throughout the country for a while. In February 1953, Dazai established a primary agricultural production cooperative based on the Chen Yonggui Mutual Aid Group. Chen Yonggui led the villagers to continuously reform labor management methods, experiment with new scientific farming methods, and achieve a bumper harvest of grain. Chairman Mao called on agriculture to learn from Dazai, and Chen Yonggui became a banner. Chairman Mao said that big bosses should not be underestimated. Chen Yonggui has practical experience and knowledge, and he really has dialectics. However, the books we read in our universities become more and more stupid the more we read. Some of our cadres are stupid because they are divorced from the masses, and they are not at the level of Chen Yonggui. On May 1st Labor Day in 1967, Chairman Mao boarded Tiananmen Square, and Chen Yonggui was invited to Chairman Mao's side, at the 9th National Congress in 1969 and the 10th National Congress in 1973, Chairman Mao personally nominated Chen Yonggui. In 1975, he became the deputy. Reason. Chen Yonggui's position is getting higher and higher, but he insists on not moving his household registration and not receiving state wages. His source of income is still Dazai's work points, which are 1 yuan and 50 cents. Every year after autumn, when Dazai distributes grain, Chen Yonggui's rations must be specially taken out and sent to the commune grain store to be exchanged for national grain coupons, and sent to Chen Yonggui in Beijing. Chen Yonggui has always maintained the true nature of a working people, does not leave production, does not require any subsidies, and does not take a car. According to Chairman Mao's request, Chen Yonggui spent 1/3 of his time working in Dazai, 1/3 of his time traveling across the country, and the rest of his time working in Beijing. Under the leadership of Chen Yonggui, the people of Dazai engaged in the basic construction of farmland. The grain handed over to the state increased every year, and hospitals, kindergartens, and schools were also built. When Chen Yonggui lived in a hotel, he got up very early every day to fold the quilt, sweep the floor, and do the laundry by himself. The guards rushed to help him, and he said angrily, "It's not that I don't have long hands." He went to Lhasa for inspection and did not go to the Padala Palace. He said, "Cropland is the most interesting thing. The scene of farmland construction with red flags waving and people cheering is the most beautiful." He is very addicted to smoking. He smoked the dry tobacco grown by himself in Dazai, and changed to cigarettes in Beijing, but they were all low-quality cigarettes with a box of about 30 cents. This is Chen Yonggui, the poor man in the State Council. During foreign affairs activities, foreign guests sometimes gave Chen Yonggui some gifts such as calculators, and he handed them in all of them. In 1975, Chen Yonggui moved out of Diaotai. According to regulations, he should be assigned a waiter. Chen Yonggui refused, saying, "It's inconvenient to have a young girl, forget it." The relevant department said that they could send an older one, but Chen Yonggui said, "It's inappropriate to serve me at such an age." Chen Yonggui was a high-ranking official in Beijing, but his family did not keep up with the blessings. Being strict with himself, he asked his wife and children to earn work points in Dazai, and he did not even transfer their urban hukou to them. The local leaders in Shaanxi once completed all the procedures for his family members to enter Beijing behind Chen Yonggui's back. When Chen Yonggui learned about it, he slapped the table and shouted, "Who did it? I don't agree. Who dares?" After the death of Chairman Mao, Chen Yonggui continued to insist on doing things according to Chairman Mao's ideology, which caused conflicts with many people. In 1980, Chen Yonggui asked to resign from his position, and then worked as a consultant at a farm in the eastern suburbs of Beijing, continuing to exert his residual heat. On November 23, 1980, the organization approved and forwarded the Shaanxi Provincial Party Committee's inspection report on experience and lessons in the agricultural learning from Dazai movement with document number 83, and added comments, believing that Dazai had changed from an advanced model on the agricultural front to a leftist. The model of the leaning line believes that it is wrong and harmful to model, absolutize, and eternalize the experience of advanced models. On August 12, 1985, Chen Yonggui was admitted to Beijing Hospital. When he learned that he had lung cancer, he stopped taking medicine, because he felt that it was a waste of money for the country. Chen Yonggui started to take care of his own funeral affairs. He originally wanted to pay all the party dues of more than 8,000 yuan in savings, which also included more than 3,000 yuan that his family's house was paid to the collective during the land reform. But his wife disagreed, saying that his youngest son was going to college in a few months, so Chen Yonggui amended his will and left part of his son's tuition. Chen Yonggui's deeds have left us with a lot of emotion. Why was there such a leader in the Mao era? Chen Yonggui said, "It is worth living with Chairman Mao all my life. In the future, there will never be a great leader like Chairman Mao who will hold a farmer to such a high position people." On March 26, 1986, Chen Yonggui died of illness at the age of 72. Ashes were sent back to Dazai for burial. Looking at it today, Chen Yonggui achieved such great achievements only by following Chairman Mao's teachings and using the power of the revolutionary spirit and socialist means to solve production problems. So, should we continue to learn from Chen Yonggui? In 1964, Dazai bought a fat and strong farming ox, but he fell down not long after and broke the ox's bone, making it impossible to plow the fields. Chen Yonggui took the cattle to the food department of the county to sell them, but when he arrived at the market, he was surrounded by people, who offered high prices, the highest being 80 yuan. Someone from the food department came over and offered 27 yuan. Chen Yonggui said, "You drive away." The people at the scene immediately exploded. They didn't sell it to 80, but sold it to 27. Fools and nerves. Chen Yonggui finally explained, "It's not that I'm crazy, nor that I'm a fool. The cow has broken its spine and can't work. You can't work after buying it. The masses don't complain about you. They still blame us, saying Dazai the production team lied to the brother production team. This is not what Dazai people do." Second, during the period of large collectives, struggles between cotters and livestock and poultry occurred in almost every village. The crops belonged to the collective, and the livestock and poultry belonged to the commune members. This phenomenon also exists in Dazai. One day, Chen Yonggui announced a rule in Dazai: all households should lock up their pigs. From tomorrow, anyone who catches a pig in the crop field, no matter what family belongs to it, will be fined a bucket of corn. The next day, Chen Yonggui asked his wife to let the pig out, but his wife refused to do so, and Chen Yonggui became anxious. "If I tell you to let it go, you will let it go." After the explanation, Chen Yonggui called the cotters of the brigade to check the implementation of the new regulations, and caught Chen Yonggui's pig before halfway through. A cotter smoothed things over. "Old Chen, it seems sick. Forget it." Chen Yonggui didn't reply. He went straight to the warehouse of the brigade and raised the bucket, and said to other cotters, "Come on, go to my house to pack corn." Since then, there has been no phenomenon of privately releasing pigs and chickens in Dazai. Third, Chen Yonggui is straightforward, has a bad temper, and often loses his temper at home, but he has never beaten his wife or children, and he does not engage in machismo at home. Later, when he was transferred to work in Beijing, he found that when cooking in Beijing families, the couple help each other. After returning to Dazai, Chen Yonggui scolded the men in Dazai with a smile and scolding at the member meeting: "Women cook for you in the morning, fold the quilt, wash the dishes, and you just take the bowl and eat it? People also, why don't you fucking care about anything? If your wife cooks, you can't peel an onion? Your man doesn't do any housework? Cooking and washing clothes are women's business. Men and women are equal. Men will help women cook in the future. No, you can lie down on the kong after eating? No. Starting tomorrow, men will go home and help their wives cook. No work points will be given if you don't cook. You will lie down on the kong after eating. Come on, women wash the dishes for you, and let you fuck at night. Why should your wife bring you food when you are sitting on the kong? Serve your man? What is equal pay for equal work? That's it." Since then, men in Dazai have changed the tradition of thousands of years and started to do housework, and the custom still exists today, which is unique in the local area. Fourth, Chen Yonggui was transferred to work in Beijing. According to regulations, he could bring his family members here, but he refused. Instead, he asked his wife and children to earn work points in Dazai, and he did not even transfer their urban cookout to them. The relevant departments in Shaanxi transferred the household registrations of his family members behind Chen Yonggui's back, and wanted to send them to Beijing. They only greeted Chen Yonggui after completing the formalities. Chen Yonggui slapped the table and shouted, "Who did it? I don't agree, who dares?" But he backed away. Not only did family members have to rely on participating in collective labor in Dazai to earn work points for food, but Chen Yonggui himself only earned work points by exchanging Dazai food stamps for national food stamps and bringing them to Beijing for use. After Chen Yonggui moved to Jianika, cotters from Xiang and model workers from all over the country often came to visit, and it was inevitable to treat guests to dinner. The State Council stipulated that you can apply for a guest meal subsidy, and the staff around you applied without saying hello to Chen Yonggui, and was immediately approved. Chen Yonggui stared and said, "My guest asked the national newspaper? Return it." So he returned it again. 5th. According to Chen Yonggui's recollection in his later years, once, he brought some of his own local products to Zhangqing from Dazai to Beijing. Zhangqing insisted on paying, and said to Chen Yonggui, "Old Chen, we are all members of the Communist Party and Chairman Mao. To train party cotters, we must consciously accept and obey party discipline, resist the invasion of bourgeois legal rights, and we should not engage in the bourgeois style of treating guests and giving gifts. However, fair trading is still allowed. Money, I must pay, I will also accept what you send. The communication between us is completely within the scope of the party's principles." This shocked Chen Yonggui quite a bit. Once Chen Yonggui went to Guizhou for inspection. After returning to Beijing, he found 2 extra boxes of mutai. He asked the staff, only to find out that the leaders of Guizhou forced it into Lishong behind his back. Chen Yonggui was very upset and ordered the staff to send the money. Another time, when Chen Yonggui was eating at his residence in Beijing, he found chickens, but he did not order to buy them, so he asked the staff about the origin of the chickens, and when he learned that the chickens were sent by people from his hometown, he urged him to send money to go. He only has a living allowance of more than 100 yuan per month, and he sends money here and everywhere, which really stumps the staff around him. This makes Chen Yonggui not only have simple food at ordinary times, but also can't even afford tea in meetings. 6th. Chen Yonggui often said, "I grew up under the nurture of Mao Zedong thought, which is not just a scene." Chen Yonggui was born in poverty. When he was 6 years old, his mother and younger brother were sold to the next county by his father. Later, his father hanged himself because he was desperate. He was liberated after Chairman Mao led the poor working people to overthrow the 3 mountains. Therefore, Chen Yonggui loved Chairman Mao from the bottom of his heart and listened to Chairman Mao wholeheartedly. Chairman Mao called on the rural areas to establish cooperatives. Chen Yonggui led some farmers in Dazai to establish cooperatives in 1952, and achieved a bumper harvest that year. In 1964, Chairman Mao was very dissatisfied with the situation of the socialist education movement in the countryside. Many rural cotters did not participate in labor, but instead received high work points, which resulted in a big difference in the income of commune members. Tao Luya, then secretary of the Shaanxi Provincial Party Committee, reported to Chairman Mao that under the leadership of Chen Yonggui, the cotters in Dazai insisted on putting politics in command and always insisted on participating in labor on the front line of production. There is a difference between cotters' work points and social workers' points, but not very different, which prevents the phenomenon of high work points. After learning about the deeds of Chen Yonggui and Dazai in detail, Chairman Mao praised and said, "Chen Yonggui has practical experience and knowledge, he is the one who really has dialectics, and the books we read in universities become more and more stupid. Some of our cotters who are divorced from the masses are stupid, and they are not at the level of Chen Yonggui." Chen Yonggui never went to school and was originally illiterate, but he worked very hard. After heavy labor, he insisted on self-study, and soon he was able to read newspapers and read selected works of Mao Zedong with the help of a dictionary. Chen Yonggui's education level is not high, but his speech is clear, logical, orderly, and full of dialectics. After hearing Chen Yonggui's report, Zhao Shulai was full of praise. His speech was of high level and dialectical. Although Chen Yonggui would not quote Chairman Mao's works when he spoke, and the examples he gave were all about the farmers, Mao Zedong thought was reflected everywhere. 7. In 1977, in the absence of Chairman Mao, some unhealthy tendencies in various places began to rise. Chen Yonggui was very worried about this. In June, Chen Yonggui went to Dongping County, Shandong Province to inspect the great battle organized by tens of thousands of people. During the period, the leaders of Dongping County invited Chen Yonggui to visit Mount Tai not far away. But Chen Yonggui was not in the mood, and said, I'll go after retirement. I'd better look at a few more projects. Not long after, Chen Yonggui went to Hangzhou again, and the local leaders advised him to swim in the West Lake. He also said to see it later, but he never swam in the West Lake in his life. Similarly, he passed Huangshan but did not go up Huangshan, and he did not enter the Potala Palace when he arrived in Lhasa. For Chen Yonggui, crops and land are the most interesting things, and the People's Commune Agricultural Conference with the red flags waving and crowds cheering is the most beautiful sight. After returning to Beijing, Chen Yonggui raised his doubts, but was ridiculed as still as naive as a 3-year-old child. Soon, Chen Yonggui was retired. He rejected the pension from the government and planted his own crops, allowing his children to return to their hometown and allow them to live a normal life without allowing them to use their fame to make money. On the evening of March 26, 1986, Chen Yonggui died in Beijing at the age of 72. Before he died, he said with tears, "I have been able to be with Chairman Mao all my life, and I have lived a life in vain. People are doomed to die, and I did not embarrass Chairman Mao. From now on, I will never be together again. There will be a great leader like Chairman Mao, who will hold a peasant to such a high position." After Chen Yonggui passed away, there was only one high-ranking person to see him off at Babayashan Hualao. In front of the deserted morning hall, Hua bowed quickly 3 times to Chen Yonggui's coffin, and then walked around the body, crying like rain. So, what happened between them? Why was Chen Yonggui's funeral in Dazai so crowded? First of all, Chen Yonggui and Hua are both from Shaanxi. One is in Xi'an County and the other is in Jiaoshan County. They can be said to be fellow brothers. Secondly, they are all from the grassroots and have rich experience in local work. Chen Yonggui was born in a poor peasant family and provided intelligence to the 8th Route Army during the anti-Japanese war. After the founding of the People's Republic of China, Chen Yonggui was the secretary of the Dazai Party branch. He took the lead and led the cooperative farmers to dig ditches on the earth and rocks to build land, store water and food, and fought 3 battles against wolves. In 1952, Dazai's grain yield per mu was 237 jin. 10 years later, it reached 774 jin, 3 times the original. Chairman Mao happily wrote, "Learn from digging in industry, and learn from Dazai in agriculture." Hua was born in a family of small merchants. He started from participating in the local anti-Japanese and National Salvation Vanguard, and gradually served as leaders of Jiaoshan County, Luoyang District, Xiongtan County, Xiongtan Prefectural Committee and Hunan Provincial Committee. He focused on carrying out the agricultural cooperative movement in 1955, when Chairman Mao read the article "We Must Resolutely Rely on Poor Peasants in the Cooperative Movement" written by Hua. After the article, he held his hand tightly and said, "You are really my parent officer." Thirdly, both Hua and Chen Yonggui were promoted to Beijing by Chairman Mao in the 1970s, and they were both familiar with agriculture, so naturally they had a lot of contact. In the end, after the two became high-ranking officials, they never forgot their original aspirations, kept in mind Chairman Mao's teachings, and were honest and upright. No matter what meeting Chen Yonggui held, he always wore the old farmer's double-breasted clothes and a white headscarf. He didn't care about his rank, and he didn't even need salary for his position. He only received Dazai's work points. He doesn't take a car, doesn't need a waiter, and eats simple food every day. So the young people affectionately call him Uncle Yonggui. Hua is also very frugal. According to Chen Yonggui's wife's recollection, after Hua took office as deputy ZL, he did not hire anyone to wash and cook at home. He did everything by himself, even washing dishes, and he was unwilling to ask his wife to help. They also like to go down to research. Chen Yonggui's rule is, 1/3 of the country visits and investigates, 1/3 returns to Dazai to work in agriculture, and 1/3 stays in Beijing to work. In 1971, in just 1 month, Hua traveled to 19 brigades in 18 communes in 17 counties in 6 provinces across the country. He suffered from acute appendicitis and was admitted to the hospital due to the exhaustion of the journey. But as soon as his health recovered, he embarked on a journey of investigation. However, after the death of Chairman Mao, the two had a disagreement. For example, when discussing whether to cancel private plots or keep private plots, Chen Yonggui deeply realized that only organized farmers can resist natural disasters and promote the construction of farmland water conservancy. He believes that maintaining the rural people's communes is to implement Chairman Mao's ideology. However, Hua did not listen to his opinion. Later, there was a trend of criticizing Dazai in the public opinion. They said that Dazai's achievements were fake, and imitating Dazai was reckless bragging. Chen Yonggui was under tremendous pressure mentally. In 1980, Chen Yonggui felt that he could not continue to be loyal to his duty and should not continue to stay in such a high position, so he voluntarily resigned. He said, "Alas, can't do it. People can't avoid us, let's not wait for others to be exempted, let's write an application ourselves." A year later, Hua also resigned from important positions. They left the political center at the same time, and they interacted less. Chen Yonggui went to Beijing Dongjiao Farm as a consultant. Hua Zi lives reclusively, except on September 9 and December 26, accompanied by his children to commemorate Chairman Mao. He rarely goes out on weekdays, very low-key. But when Dang Hua heard that Chen Yonggui was suffering from cancer, he took the initiative to visit the hospital. The two had a great time together and never seemed to have any disagreements. On March 26, 1986, Chen Yonggui died of illness. Before that, he had told his family many times not to hold a funeral for him, nor to invite others to come to offer condolences, but to simply send the ashes back to Dazai. Therefore, during Chen Yonggui's funeral, the outside of the Babayashan funeral home was deserted, making people mistakenly think that the time and place were wrong. After Kehua learned the news, he drove over by car. He walked into the farewell room without saying a word, bowed 3 times in front of Chen Yonggui's body, stared blankly at Chen Yonggui's body, and shed tears. Then, with tears in his eyes, Hua slowly walked around Chen Yonggui, shook hands with Chen Yonggui's relatives without saying a word, and then got in the car and left. Hua didn't say a word, but his tears couldn't be concealed from anyone. Maybe he thought of Chairman Mao's entrustment to him when he was alive, maybe he thought of the days and nights he had struggled with Chen Yonggui, maybe he also thought of Chen Yonggui's love for him. His advice and counsel. According to the records of those involved, at Chen Yonggui's memorial service, there were crowds applauding for Hua's arrival. However, unlike Beijing's desolation, when the relatives returned to Dazai with Chen Yonggui's urn in their arms, and the hearse drove to Niangziguan at the junction of Hebei and Shaanxi, the leaders of Xiang County were already waiting here. When the hearse arrived at the junction of Pingding and Xiang, there was another row of people kneeling on the road. Liangbian Liang, Guofeng Lian, and others from Dazai welcomed the spirit here. At 4 p.m., when the hearse finally arrived at Dazai, there was already a sea of people, and people from all directions surrounded Dazai in an impenetrable way. Chen Mingzhu, Chen Yonggui's son, got out of the car holding the urn. Many people burst into tears when they saw it. More people rushed to Chen Mingzhu, wanting to touch the urn. Deafening firecrackers exploded, and the band from Xiang Art School played Shaanxi folk music. According to Chen Yonggui's last wish, his ashes were scattered on the land of Dazai. People in Dazai erected a monument for him on the top of Huda Mountain, and wrote, "Great achievements cover the tiger's head, achievements spread the earth." Later, Song Liying, the first female party member in Dazai, said, "Dazai did it." In the past, the newspapers said that Dazai was good every day, and everything was good. A while ago, they said that Dazai had this problem, that problem, and everything was a problem. In fact, Dazai in the past was not as good as you say, and Dazai today is not as bad as you say. Xiaoping felt that this was the truth. Chen Chunmiai, Chen Yonggui's granddaughter, said in the book My Grandpa Chen Yonggui, "He looks like a farmer and does farm work, but deep in his soul he is a thinker." Xiaoping remembered something similar to what Chairman Mao said back then, "Don't underestimate the big old man." Chen Yonggui has practical experience and knowledge, and he is the one who really has dialectics. The books we read in our universities become more stupid the more they read. Xiaoping believes that history has already given the answer to whether Chen Yonggui is capable or not, and the people will give Chen Yonggui a fair word. The reason why Chen Yonggui is so popular among the people is that he can pass the test of socialism well, become a revolutionary, can always stand on the side of Chairman Mao's correct line, never surrender, can never forget that he is a peasant, and has not been corrupted. Such a good cadre, we naturally need to publicize it more. I would like to use this article to commemorate the death of Comrade Chen Yonggui. Chen Yonggui used to be the branch secretary of Dazai village in the 1960s. He was born in a poor mountainous area. After he became the person in charge of Dazai village, he used scientific methods and hard work to help the village out of poverty. become a role model for the whole country to learn from. In 1975, under the personal intervention of Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou, a campaign of learning from Dazai in agriculture was launched across the country. Therefore, Chen Yonggui walked from the Hudu Mountain in the Taihang Mountains to Zhongnanhai and became the vice premier of the State Council. However, within a few years, the joint production contract system began to be implemented in rural areas across the country, and learning from Dazai in agriculture became a thing of the past for a while. Later, Chen Yonggui also resigned as vice premier of the State Council. In March 1986, Chen Yonggui died at the age of 71. Before Chen Yonggui passed away, he enjoyed the retirement benefits of the vice premier of the State Council, so what kind of standards should be followed to hold a memorial service for him has become a problem. At this time, Deng Xiaoping stood up. He advocated holding a memorial service for Chen Yonggui according to the treatment of the vice premier of the State Council, and personally reviewed and published an obituary about his death. The obituary said, "Comrade Chen Yonggui was once a well-known model worker in the country. In the early days of liberation, he resolutely listened to the party's words, took the lead in organizing cooperatives, and devoted his life to changing the poverty of mountainous areas. His spirit of daring to fight against heaven and earth has been highly praised and commended by Chairman Mao of the party's Central Committee and Premier Zhou." Then, how did Chen Yonggui become a vice premier of the State Council from a farmer who did not go to school, and why did Deng Xiaoping insist on holding a memorial service for Chen Yonggui according to the treatment of a vice premier? 1. Leading Dazai to double grain production. In 1914, Chen Yonggui was born in a poor peasant family in Xiang, Shaanxi. Judging from his resume, he has been farming in the Taihang Mountains since the day he was born, and he did not join the Communist Party of China until 1948 when he was 34 years old. In 1949, after the founding of New China, Chen Yonggui became the party branch secretary of the local Dazai village. Dazai village is located in the Taihang Mountains, and most of the farmland is located on the ridges. Because there are many rocks on the mountain and the land is uneven, watering after planting grain is very problematic. Often, a ladle of water and fertilizer is poured down, and it immediately flows towards the low places on both sides of the hillside. Therefore, there has always been a jingle circulating in the local area. The manure flows on the ground, washing away the water and leaving the stones. Chen Yonggui could not read a few words, but he was smart and eloquent. Since becoming secretary of the party branch of Dazai village, he has often consulted experts on agricultural knowledge, and finally developed parallel terraced fields with wisdom and hard work, doubling the grain output. In the mid-1960s, Chairman Mao heard about Chen Yonggui's deeds when he went south for inspection, and told Premier Zhou about it after returning to Zhongnanhai. Premier Zhou immediately arranged for an investigation team to enter Dazai village to conduct on-the-spot inspections. Later, the inspection team made a report and highly praised the sponge fields in Dazai. At that time, Chairman Mao intended to let the whole country learn from Dazai. For this reason, Premier Zhou visited Hudu Mountain 3 times. Guo Moruo also said at the time that he hoped that 100 years later, Dazai's Hudu Mountain would be his home. 2. Chen Yonggui, Deputy Prime Minister of Farmers. In 1975, the central government decided to set off a climax of learning from Dazai across the country. At that time Deng Xiaoping said, "Chen Yonggui is a farmer with a brain." Later, Chen Yonggui served as the vice premier of the State Council. At that time, some people did not take Chen Yonggui seriously, because he was different from the leaders of other countries. Others had gone through decades of bullets and bullets before finally entering the core leadership of New China, but he did not fight a single day. Only Chairman Mao, Premier Zhou, and Deng Xiaoping felt that there was nothing wrong with all this, so why did these 3 leaders support Chen Yonggui? China has been relying on agriculture for thousands of years to build a country. Many young people living in cities have learned knowledge from books, but they are completely unfamiliar with farm work, irrespective of suspicion. Therefore, from the 1950s to the 1970s, Chairman Mao has been calling on urban educated youths to go to the mountains and go to the countryside. At the same time, he invited some experienced experts in agricultural production to work in government departments, and Chen Yonggui was one of them. The same is true of Deng Xiaoping. We all know that he has a very famous theory: it doesn't matter whether the cat is white or black, as long as it catches mice, it is a good cat. Therefore, although some people attacked Chen Yonggui, thinking that his qualifications and education were not enough to be the vice premier of the State Council, Deng Xiaoping still firmly supported him in taking office. When launching the agricultural learning from Dazai nationwide, Jiang Qing still wanted to mess things up. She made a little Jinshuang as a model, and wanted farmers all over the country to learn from it. The reason why Jiang Qing wanted to make this little Jinshuang a model was because the people in this village can sing model operas and make up revolutionary jingles. Deng Xiaoping thought this was simply nonsense. So in September 1975, during the rehearsal for the Third National Games, Deng Xiaoping recorded the performance about Little Jinshuang. People from the State Sports Commission asked, and Deng Xiaoping said, Chairman Mao advocated learning from Dazai in agriculture, learning from small instead of big. What's so good about Zai Jinshuang? It is fed with state money. Deng Xiaoping once humbly stated at a meeting that he was basically a layman in agriculture and could only rely on Hua Qiubeng and Chen Yonggui in this regard. All he has done is naturally to increase the country's grain production and make the common people have enough to eat. Before the 1980s, China's grain output was relatively low, and in the period before that, the output was even lower. It was not until 1963 that the economic situation improved slightly. Since the past method does not work, it can only find a new method. At this time, Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou discovered Dazai and Chen Yonggui. When agricultural science and technology have not made major breakthroughs, and when Yuan Longping's hybrid rice has not been popularized, if we want to increase food production, we can only give full play to the industrious and intelligent nature of Chinese farmers, and use tenacious willpower to defeat nature. Therefore, learning from Dazai in agriculture is to call on hundreds of millions of farmers across the country to learn from Dazai's spirit of fighting against the sky and fighting against the earth. Deng Xiaoping supported Chen Yonggui's Dazai spirit. Later, Chen Yonggui was so grateful that he risked his life to speak out for him. After Chairman Mao passed away in 1976, Deng Xiaoping continued to support learning from Dazai in agriculture. However, new changes occurred in the domestic situation later, and the joint production contract system gradually emerged in some rural areas. Because of this transformation, the People's Commune lost its meaning of existence and disintegrated. Without the Commune, it would be impossible to talk about learning from Dazai. When Chen Yonggui served as the vice premier of the State Council, it was because he wanted to expand the experience of the village across the country. But after the disintegration of the Commune, Chen Yonggui could not play any role. Coupled with issues such as qualifications, there are more and more gossips around him. In the end, some people publicly slandered and attacked him. In 1980, Chen Yonggui voluntarily resigned from the position of vice premier of the State Council. At that time, Deng Xiaoping had a long talk with him, and finally agreed to his resignation, but still arranged for him to live in a big house in Jiadika, Beijing. However, Chen Yonggui firmly disagreed to continue to enjoy the treatment of the vice premier, and finally moved to the minister building outside Fuxingmen, and the furniture only brought a bed, an old TV, file boxes, and other daily necessities. After going through all these ups and downs, Chen Yonggui did not fail. 3 years later, when he was nearly 70 years old, he took the initiative to write a letter to Deng Xiaoping, hoping to use his expertise to continue to contribute to the country. This time, the country arranged for him to work as a consultant on a farm in the suburbs of Beijing. Chen Yonggui did a lot of work there, and wrote letters to Deng Xiaoping from time to time to make suggestions, and the latter adopted them one by one. Unfortunately, Chen Yonggui fell seriously ill in 1985 and passed away in March of the following year. Epilogue. In 1980, Guo Fenglian approached Deng Xiaoping to defend Chen Yonggui. She told Deng Xiaoping that at that time some people in China were constantly attacking and slandering Chen Yonggui because of the Dazai issue. Deng Xiaoping told her, "Sometimes the trend of the times is irresistible. Premier Zhou has been to Dazai 3 times, and I have been there twice. Dazai did it. I praised Dazai at the National Conference on Learning from Dazai in Agriculture, and there is nothing wrong with learning from Dazai. We must separate Dazai itself from learning from Dazai. Learning from Dazai is the spirit of Dazai." Chairman Mao, Premier Zhou, and Deng Xiaoping were all optimistic about Dazai back then, because at that time there was no better way to boost people's hearts and improve agricultural production than Dazai. With the changes of the times, people later found a better way, and the Dazai form would no longer work, but this does not mean that it is wrong to advocate learning the Dazai spirit. It was the trend of history that pushed Chen Yonggui to the forefront of politics. In the end, the situation changed. but it cannot be denied that Chen Yonggui and the Dazai spirit still have a side worth learning. Faced with doubts and accusations from the outside world, Chen Yonggui chose to resign as vice premier of the State Council, but he did not give up his ideals and pursuits. At the age of 68, Chen Yonggui still wanted to rely on his own knowledge and experience to do practical things for the country, and he did not disappoint the appreciation of Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou. Therefore, Deng Xiaoping insisted on the proper treatment and held a memorial service for Chen Yonggui. There may be some controversy in Dazai, but as a model worker, Chen Yonggui still has some qualities shining in him. On September 23, 1970, Chen Yonggui, as the soul of Dazai, responded to the outside world's doubts about Dazai when he gave a report at the graduation meeting of a study class run by the province, and also disclosed some of Dazai's early years. At the same time, he also expressed his views on the learning from Dazai movement. You can take a look at what he said. Does it match your impression of that era? This is part of the report, from the third chapter of the fifth volume of Shaanxi Provincial Chronicles Chen Yonggui, published by Zonghua Book Company in 2015, pages 703 to 713. In terms of learning from Dazai, comrades should pay attention to it, and don't just focus on the surface. In particular, Dazai has no private land, and the brigade makes calculations. After some comrades went back to study, they collected their private land, pigs from other people's production teams, and trees in front of and behind their houses to the brigade. It is indeed gone. For example, the issue of private trees. After the disaster in 1963, there were no private trees, private land, and even houses collapsed. Why not private plots? It's not that the cotters ordered the members to return their private plots, but the cotters went down to mobilize the private plots, and the commune members stopped planting them. Dazai's wealth is not the result of taking back all the private plots of the commune members. It is because the collective has become richer, the collectively distributed more food, the income has also increased, the food has also increased, and the thinking has improved, so everyone does not want it. We also did some ideological work for private plots, and mobilized everyone to plant private plots. This is a policy. Members also criticized the cotters for being wrong. 1 mu of collective land can be divided into 8 or 900 caddies of grain, and 1 mu of private land can be divided into 2 to 300 caddies. Why should I grow private plots? If the food cannot be supplied, and the members of the commune are not satisfied with the food, everyone's private land can be added to the 2 if they can't add a caddy. Can the production be increased by taking back the personal private land? Can you fatten up the collective? Bring back your own trees, and you will be able to approach? Totally not. Our production has not yet come up, the masses have not yet awakened, and you cannot meet any requirements. How can you cancel the private plot? Another one is to build a new countryside. Do you have this condition? Before the food has passed the customs, you should grasp the new countryside. The new countryside won't produce food for you, and you can't maintain the life of the members, so how can you build a new countryside? In some places, after seeing Dazai, they demolished old houses and built new when they returned. It also brought dissatisfaction among the masses. Dazai has never demolished an old house, and the old ones were washed away by the floods. If it is not repaired, will there be no houses to live in? If we could get food from the new countryside, we would have done it a long time ago, and we still have to wait until after the 1963 flood. Let's just talk about high indicators. Qingjing County, Wanjin Society, Satellite Team, the loss is still small. Is it still small enough to dampen the enthusiasm of the broad masses? If things go on like this, the class enemies will not be happy. For example, if 30,000 caddies of corn are grown on 1 mu of land, then 11 caddies of corn will be produced on that one stalk. Each of our counties, communes, and teams have heard it, yelling every day, taking the lead, and thousands of horses galloping. A horse in Dazai did not become the first, and 10,000 horses did not gallop. Why didn't our food go up? It's just that we didn't engage in exaggeration. In 1957, we carried out a whole winter of land infrastructure construction. Revolutionary and desperate, in 1958 we had another big spring. The yield per mu has increased by more than 220 caddies, and the average yield per person has increased by more than 500 caddies. This is enough for a leap forward. But if we went to participate in the advanced representative meeting, we would not be on the list. They have the Wanjin Society and the Satellite Team. They do our job and want us to change to double jacks. You can only be listed on the list if you change it, and steal the honor of the country for the sake of being a model for a while. We don't do that. We send a telegram saying that we are as many as we are, 1 is 1, 2 is 2, and we can't lie to people if we don't make it to the list. He came back in despair. Later, the low-yield unit that couldn't make the list went to visit them. I remember that 1 mu of sweet potatoes produced 1.1 million caddies. Some comrades were very enthusiastic, but I didn't have that kind of enthusiasm. I sat down and thought, why do you have such courage to say these things? So, what will you do in the future? At the meeting, I also criticized by name, and some people's tails went up to the sky. Everyone knows Guo Zhenshan, do ideological work for me, Yonggui, don't be emotional, others have high grades, but you have low grades, comrades should do their best. Did I say they have great grades or are they exaggerated? He said you dare not say that. Why do those old county committees, old prefectural committees, and old provincial committees always want to put me to death as soon as they start a movement? It's just that I love to give opinions. In April of the following year, 4 members of the Jinsong Prefectural Committee came to Dazai. They said that all the high-yield units have been exposed. Your sloping land hits 540 caddies. How much less? I said that we are not only not less than 540 caddies, but also 5 or 6 caddies more. The rations of the commune members have been distributed to their families, the reserve grain has been put into the warehouse, and the purchased grain is stored there. This made them hate them, saying everywhere that Chen Yonggui is great, that Dazai's tail is up to the sky, that tigers can't touch their buttocks, and they even say that we are anti-party. Giving them advice is anti-party. Sue. Revolution, how can we not ask others to sue? If you want to sue, just sue. In 1964, they used the name of psyching to retaliate. In order to think that the yield is too high, the land is measured. This is how Dazai is doing across the country. Our hillside land contains 800 caddies of grain per mu. They don't believe that the plains with the conditions for the 4 modernizations are not so high, so there is no need to investigate, it must be black land. Mingli is 802 mu, but the actual number of 802 mu is unknown. At the beginning, I was very energetic, but I plan to expand a few more 802 acres to see where you go. If you can't beat you are considered a ghost. Zang for more than 50 days, the more vigorous the less. Needless to say, there are several 802s, none of which is enough, and more than 6 acres are missing. Culture. At the beginning, the poor and lower middle peasants wanted to take them back and repair the 6 mu of land we lost. During the day he was dragged to carry stones to repair the land, and at night he was criticized, making a fuss for more than a week. It is no problem for a commune member to carry more than 100 caddies of rocks to climb the mountain, but he has to wrestle even if he carries 10 caddies. After working for a few days, the members of the commune said forget it, get out, they will not be repaired even if they die, so they sent them away. Look at how bureaucratic they are, do they still have a point of view of the masses? Then why is there less? There was a survey of land in our county when it was first liberated, and then another team came to measure the land. There was a conflict during the survey. They measured the land in Dazai, and the fraction of the land was counted as 1 mu. The same is true for other teams in Dazai. Even more than half an acre dares to report an acre. It is not an estimate but the amount. The bigger the fire, and no one wants to punish anyone. Therefore, the land was over-reported, and we repaired the land to make up for the vacancy. They don't investigate, they just say that the land is repaired every year, and there will be no shortage of land. Of course, the more the land is repaired, the more it will be repaired, and the less it will be, who will repair it. They measure the land, and the masses shed tears. Counting 9 cold days, more than 20 degrees below zero, 3 feet of freezing, bloody seams on the hands, and crimes after repairing the land. If you shed this tear, they will measure it. What can you do? They have the right, but we don't have the right. This plan is useless. It is said that there is not much land in Dazai, and it sells more than 200,000 caddies of grain to the state every year, with an average of 3,000 caddies per household. The Grain Bureau may play tricks on him. Go to the Grain Bureau to take out the accounts of Unified Purchase and Sales in 1953, and check them up and down. Our unified purchase is not less than 1 caddy and 1 tael. A cotter from the second Jin dynasty came to Dazai. This person came to our village in 1963 to understand the situation. We said that there are people from the central government who are also in the village, and we have to receive them first. He felt disrespected again. The leader of the Ministry of Agriculture left, and the commune members went to the fields. We went an hour later than the commune members, just to answer him. In the Qing dynasty, he came to ask if you had misrepresented your work points, but we said that you didn't have any. The words are absolute, leaving no room for it. Deliberately misrecording work points is certainly not, but we did not expect to miss that hour for work. As soon as he said we didn't have it, he threw the notebook towards our faces, and look, he caught it this time. We're wrong, we'll check. In the evening, the members came back and said they couldn't check. We knew that you didn't smoke or rest when you came that afternoon, and you worked hard all afternoon to drive out the work. And if you arrive an hour late for work, you can't record work points. Does he not miss an hour a year? They go home for 3 to 5 days, will the state still deduct his salary? He was absent from work for several months in the hospital, and the state still deducted his salary because of illness. Medical expenses are also reimbursed in full. We will not check, what else to check? Just one more thing. In 1958, when the leveling was carried out, the commune built a 10,000 head pig farm without a single pig. There are more than 300 pigs in the Dazai brigade, let us transfer the pigs there. I said that there were fewer transfers in the past, how could it be transferred to you, and you did not increase the wealth of society? Later, some places were adjusted, and I dare not adjust them. After adjusting the pigs, they opened a powder workshop to collect grain. The other team's food was delivered, but Dazai didn't. They called to criticize, but they delivered it, and you still couldn't pay it. Later, I called him and told him that I would not give you a caddy, and that no one has the right to distribute grain after the state purchase is completed. He blatantly claimed that Dazai was so proud that no one dared to offend him, that we couldn't lead Dazai, and they would teach us a lesson. Later, against the 5 winds, he said that you should learn from the people of Dazai. Didn't the people of Dazai resist it? It was the Dazai people who used their invincible thoughts to withstand those unhealthy tendencies. These are endless. During the Saiking period, Jia Jinkei, Jia Chenrang, and Song Liang of our brigade had already prepared to commit suicide. Dozens of them committed suicide in our county, just didn't trust the masses and comrades, and if they couldn't achieve their goals, think about it. Way to persecute you. Some comrades went to Dazai, and they had a lot of doubts about Dazai. I went to see that the crops in Dazai were not special, and it was a bumper harvest in autumn. Why do we produce more? There are times when we don't look as good as the brothers, we just don't pull our legs. There are 2 pull leg fields, one is low yielding crop species, you need all kinds of small grains such as hemp, wheat, millet, and beans, so you need to plant more. High yield crops grow well, but low yield crops cannot bear it. On the other hand, if the bowl of water is uneven, you care about the places close to the village, and you don't care about the places far away. You don't care about it, and it doesn't care about you. So does Dazai's non-specialized cultivation of small miscellaneous grains affect the needs of members? Not only is there no less, but more. The soil layer has thickened, the fertilizer has increased, and various conditions of this land have been met. Under the high-yield crops, there are all kinds of hemp, wheat, millet, and millet. Our area is cold, but there is a lot of straw and fertilizer, and the ground can be heated. In the past, winter wheat died when planted, but now it does not freeze to death, and the yield is also high. Plain old farmer. You are an ordinary person who is the Prime Minister. High moral integrity and selfless thoughts. A generation of heroes and models rises. Diligence, thrift, and sincerity. Candid and unselfish. Dedicated to Great China. Yellow returns to roots Tiger Head Soul. Attachment, written by the granddaughter of People's Premier Chen Yonggui. My grandfather Chen Yonggui, from a farmer to the vice premier of the state council, insisted on not taking the state salary. Text/Chen Shanmia. In the 1960s, Chen Yonggui led the people of Dazai to be self-reliant and hard-working, creating the amazing Dazai spirit. Afterwards, he walked from Huda Mountain to Zhongnanhai, from a farmer to the premier of the state council, but insisted on working in the fields without receiving state wages. His life is a symbol of an era. Dazai spirit. 1963 was the year of 7 disasters and 8 disasters in Dazai, a catastrophic flood, 2 wind disasters, a hailstorm, a frost, plus a period of drought before the flood, water logging during spring sowing. Dazai was ravaged to the point of being muddy and beyond recognition, terrible. But the people of Dazai rely on the spirit of self-reliance, relying on patched shoulders and calloused iron hands to develop production and rebuild their homes. Chen Yonggui encouraged everyone optimistically, mountains are built by people, and houses are built by people. If you have people, you will not be afraid of anything, and everything will come. In the year of the catastrophe, the grain yield in Dazai was 704 caddies per mu, and the total output reached 560,000 caddies. Not only did it not ask for a penny of relief from the state, but it also paid 240,000 caddies of commercial grain to the state. At the end of that year, the goal of 3 don'ts and 3 no less was achieved. The members of the commune ended their history of living in earthen kilns forever, and all moved into new houses in stone kilns. Grandpa walked around the rows of train carriage-like new houses several times, and said happily, in the past, upstairs and downstairs, electric lights and telephones, isn't it now? The old man Jia Jinayuan sat in the new cave dwelling, looking at the with bright electric lights, listening to the rap on the trumpet. My heart was full of joy, and I said to my wife, Yonggui is right, we have seen socialism. He spoke without citations. Zhao Shulai said, his speech did not quote classics, but it was completely in line with Mao Zedong thought and dialectics. The deeds of Dazai people overcoming natural disasters attracted the attention of superior leaders, and the whole province of Shaanxi set off a climax of learning from Dazai. Grandpa introduced Dazai's experience at the Provincial Agricultural Model Worker Conference. This time, he not only introduced the process of Dazai people fighting against heaven and earth, but also showed his excellent eloquence to the participants. His speech caused a great sensation in the whole province, and people were very emotional after listening to it, and they recited it one after another. The famous writer Zhao Shulai immediately ran to the office of Tao Luya, the first secretary of the Shaanxi Provincial Party Committee, and said, Secretary Tao, I discovered talent Tao. Secretary Tao asked, who is it? Chen Yonggui. He didn't. Mao Zedong is mentioned in one place, but Mao Zedong thought is everywhere. Philosophy is not mentioned in one place, but dialectics is everywhere. I am so impressed, what a talent. Chen Yonggui is amazing. At the end of 1963, Li Yuqing, then secretary of the Central South Bureau Secretariat, came to Dazai. After the visit, he said very emotionally, Dazai has suffered such a catastrophe, but it doesn't need the country's money. It is commendable. The enthusiasm of the people in Dazai is great. This kind of perseverance is rare in contemporary China. Although Chen Yonggui is a farmer, he has a powerful charm. He has shown extraordinary commanding skills in a complicated environment. From him, I see something other than a farmer. Since then, the names of Dazai and Chen Yonggui have entered the field of vision of high-level officials. On the podium of the Great Hall of the People. On January 19, 1964, at the invitation of the Beijing Municipal Committee of the Communist Party of China and the Municipal People's Congress, Grandpa stepped onto the podium of the Great Hall of the People. More than 10,000 party, government, and military cadres stared at him, but he was calm and not shy. Without reading the script, he spoke for 4 hours with the unique words full of Taihang Mountain's local atmosphere. He talked about cooperation, 3 wars against wolves, paying more patriotic grain, emergency rescue, and disaster relief, 3 don'ts, 3 less and slope control during the day and nest control at night. He talked about the history of Dazai's construction vividly. People stared at the brigade secretary with a white towel wrapped around his head, excitedly listening to his concise, profound, vivid jingles and well-organized, logical, and philosophical words, bursting into warm applause from time to time. On February 10, 1964, People's Daily published the editorial A Good Example of Building Mountainous Areas with Revolutionary Spirit on the headline of the front page, and distributed a long article entitled Road to Dazai written by a reporter from Xinhua News Agency. Communications sounded the clarion call for national agriculture to learn from Dazai. In March 1964, Mao Zedong toured the south. He summoned Tao Luya, the first secretary of the Shaanxi Provincial Party Committee, and others to report to the special train that stopped in Handan. Tao Luya reported the situation in Dazai to Mao Zedong in detail. He said, I have been in the countryside and have met many farmers. I think Chen Yonggui is an outstanding farmer. Mao Zedong listened with interest. Tao Luya reported on Dazai's work evaluation and scoring system, and also on Chen Yonggui's practice of leading the masses to engage in collective production, with new routines every year. Hearing this, Mao Zedong asked with great interest, what are the characters of Chen Yonggui? Does he know how to read? Tao Luya wrote Chen Yonggui on the note and said, he was literate at the age of 42, I am 50 years old this year, and now I can read newspapers and understand what logic is. Mao Zedong said in a tone of affirmation and appreciation, Chen Yonggui is not very literate, but he has done a lot of things. After the meeting, Mao Zedong continued his southern tour. Everywhere he went, Mao Zedong talked about Dazai's spirit of self-reliance and hard work, and Chen Yonggui's work style of taking the lead in labor, not doing special things, and maintaining a hard and simple style. Mao Zedong said, "Hello Yonggui. In December 1964, my grandfather went to Beijing to attend the first session of the Third National People's Congress. On the morning of the 26th, just after the meeting ended, he walked out of the venue with everyone, and suddenly heard Zhou Enlai calling him from behind, 'Comrade Yonggui, please wait a moment.' He stopped in his tracks. Zhou Enlai said, 'You don't have to go to Beizhou for dinner tonight, come with me.' Zhou Enlai told him, 'Today is Chairman Mao's birthday, and the chairman specially invited you here.' Grandpa walked happily with Zhou Enlai, and when he arrived at the lounge, he saw that Chairman Zuda had arrived first, and Comrade Senji, Penzhen, Ludo Ruking, and Yukayulai were also invited. After a while, Mao Zedong walked in briskly with a smile on his face, and shook hands with everyone one by one with a smile. Mao Zedong held his hand tightly and said, 'Hello, Yonggui.' After the banquet began, Mao Zedong toasted and said humorously, 'Today is not a birthday celebration, but I use my manuscript fee to treat everyone to a meal. There are workers here, peasants, scientists, and the People's Liberation Army, not only to eat, but also to talk.' During the dinner, Mao Zedong saw that his grandfather seldom moved his chopsticks, so he said enthusiastically, 'Yonggui, eat vegetables, eat vegetables.' He took a chopstick for him and greeted him, 'This dish is good, eat this.' 'Yonggui comrade, you are welcome.' Mao Zedong knew that his grandfather was 50 years old, so he said humorously, 'Oh, I know my destiny at 50. It would be great to build a big village.' After the banquet, my grandfather was immersed in happiness and excitement, and blurted out recite a poem, 'It is easy to go down the mountain and difficult to go up the mountain, but the view of the mountain is wider when you go up the mountain. Don't say that no one goes to this mountain, and there are even more peaks ahead.' The next day, all major newspapers in the capital published photos of Mao Zedong and Chen Yonggui shaking hands cordially. On May 1st, Labor Day in 1967, Mao Zedong inspected the Red Guards in Tiananmen Square, and Grandpa was invited to Mao Zedong's side. Mao Zedong took his hand and greeted him, 'Hello, Yonggui. Hello, Yonggui.' At that time, this greeting became the highest instruction of the leader. The major newspapers posted 'Hello Yonggui. Hello Yonggui.' Some newspapers printed it in red on their eyebrows. 'You have to be prepared.' Premier Zhou said, 'You have to be prepared to be the vice premier of the State Council.' As people's voices became louder and louder, Grandpa's official positions became more and more high, from Dazai Party Branch Secretary to Xi'an County Party Secretary, Jinsong Prefectural Party Secretary, and Shaanxi Provincial Party Secretary equal rank. When Grandpa came to power in Xi'an, he did two things that others would not dare to do. One was to rehabilitate cadres and the other was to forgive food debts for the masses. He has established a high authority in Xi'an. With him in charge, no one dares to mess around. In other places, civil attack and military defense are fierce, but Xi'an's production and construction are blooming everywhere. He has been in charge of Xi'an for 12 years and in charge of Dazai for 21 years. He has done many practical things for the people in a down-to-earth manner. In January 1975, my grandfather went to Beijing to attend the first session of the Fourth National People's Congress. Zhou Enlai returned to the hospital after delivering the government work report at the meeting and told him to go there immediately. As soon as Zhou Enlai saw his grandfather, he said, "This time I am looking for you to arrange for the National People's Congress. You have to be prepared. How about being the vice premier of the State Council and promoting the spirit of Dazai to the whole country?" Grandpa was taken aback when he heard this. Hurriedly said, "Prime Minister, My education level is not good enough, I really can't be the deputy prime minister. Zhou Enlai said seriously, look at you Yonggui, are you a party member? If you are a party member, you have to accept the party's arrangements. Zhou Enlai also explained many truths to him, from ancient times to the present, from foreign countries to China, talents do not fall from the sky come down, but emerge from the masses. At this meeting, Grandpa was elected as the Vice Premier of the State Council, in charge of national agriculture. According to the arrangement of the central government, Grandpa lives in building number 3 of Diaotai. With the status of the head of the central government, he is always protected 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside when he goes out. He felt that it was difficult to get close to the masses, so he wrote a letter to Mao Zedong, proposing to move out of Diaotai and implement the 3-3 system working method, that is, 1/3 of the time spent in Dazai and Xiang, and 1/3 of the time in the whole country running, working in the central government for 1/3 of the time, can give full play to his strengths and provide some grassroots information for the central government. Mao Zedong gave instructions in the letter, it is a fine tradition of our party to go down to conduct social investigations. All Politburo members who can go down must go down. The next day, Mao Zedong held him tightly at the Politburo meeting. The Han said, Yonggui, it's good to move out of the Diaotai. There is no fish to catch on the Diaotai. Dazai is my route. Dazai is my route, I must come back. Grandpa loved Dazai deeply. On Moon Mountain, he told everyone, I will be buried here after I die. You can stand higher and see farther. People said, you are from the central government, I will be buried in Babaoshan after death, how can I come back? But he said, Dazai is my route, I must come back. Grandpa became the vice premier of the state council. According to the regulations, he can move his rural household registration to Beijing, and he should also get a national salary. But he insisted not to move his registered permanent residence, nor to get paid by the state. He still eats Dazai's rations, Dazai's work points, 1.5 yuan a day. The Shaanxi Provincial Party Committee considered that he often went to other places for meetings, and his work points alone were not enough to spend, so he was subsidized 100 yuan a month. Later, the State Council decided to subsidize him with 1.2 yuan per day considering that he was the vice premier. He accepted the subsidy from the State Council, but at the same time refunded the 1.5 yuan per day that Dazai gave him. Since then, his living expenses have been 136 yuan per month. In September 1980, at the third session of the 5th National People's Congress, Grandpa requested to resign as vice premier of the State Council, and the Congress approved his application. After Grandpa left office, the state gave him 200 yuan a month for living expenses in accordance with the standards of a formal employee. Life in old age is plain and casual. Grandpa's life in his later years was plain, casual, and happy. He gets up at 5 o'clock every morning, and first prepares breakfast for his young son and grandson who are studying with his grandmother, carefully puts it in a hot water pot to keep it warm, and eats it after the children wake up. Then walk down the stairs from the 12th floor, walk through the tree-lined path of Sanli River, and take a walk by the river near Diaotai. Seeing other people practicing Tai Chi, he also gestured a few times. He felt that it was not easy to fight, so he raised his hands, spread his legs, and assumed a posture of digging the ground. He created a set of moves and named it crop boxing. In January 1985, my grandfather suddenly felt headache and fatigue, so my father accompanied him to Beijing Hospital. After the examination, the doctor quietly told my father, he is suffering from lung cancer, which is already at an advanced stage. After learning of his condition, he felt very calm. The General Office of the Central Committee specially brought Guo Fenglian, Liang Bian Liang, Jia Chengrang, Jia Leihen, Zhao Kuntang and other old and new cadres from Dazai to Beijing to meet him for the last time. Grandpa looked at his former partners and struggled to pick up the oranges on the table for everyone to eat. He enjoined, I did not do it for the individual, and I did not do it for the children. I did it wholeheartedly for the country and the collective. From My Grandpa Chen Yonggui, by Chen Chunmia.